Hi everyone, I'm Miss Laura. Welcome to the Franklin Park Public Library, Art at Home. So in your grab and go take home kit for Art at Home, you have some watercolors, paintbrush, a pipette, a styrofoam plate, and a Sharpie, and also a couple pieces of paper, two larger sheets of paper, and a smaller sheet of watercolor paper. This larger sheet is called cover stock, and we'll start with that first. You will also need just an old cup or container to put water in to use your watercolors. Paper towel. I'll fold that up like that so you can use that to dry your paintbrush off on. And a pencil and an eraser. So we can start what we're going to do is draw a self-portrait. So you can do that with your paper that you got. I would start with a larger sheet. You can try, this is landscape where it's flat like this, or portrait is when you have it like tall. Portrait or landscape. So for mine, I'm going to do mine in landscape format. So kind of flat like a rectangle. And I'll take the Sharpie, and first I'm going to draw just a border around it with the Sharpie. So the reason why we use Sharpie with watercolor is that it's a permanent marker, and it will not get dissolved when you paint over it with the watercolor. So regular markers that you color with will the colors will kind of run and dissolve when you paint over them with water, which is also something cool if you want to experiment with that. But for this one, we want the lines to stay. Next, I'll use my pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and draw myself kind of, more or less kind of like a cartoon. I'm not going to be too serious about how I look. What I'm wanting to do is create something for myself to paint. And, you can use a mirror or a photograph of yourself to refer to if you want something to look at. Or you can draw from your memory, from your imagination. So I'm going to draw myself. I have kind of a large head. I'm going to draw kind of a large head, and I know that I'm wearing a hat, it's a black stocking cap. I wear hats all the time in the wintertime. So I'm drawing lightly, and I know that I have glasses on, and my glasses they're kind of rounded, they're kind of like rounded rectangles. So I'm drawing these actually pretty quickly, and my nose I kind of have a wide nose. So I'm drawing kind of a larger nose. This is kind of more or less, and I have my lips are kind of large. I'm kind of drawing more or less something that looks like me, but that can also be as kind of a cartoon. It's kind of a caricature. It's not going to be exactly in my eyebrows. And so this is going to be me. And right now I'm wearing a scarf. So I'm going to draw kind of a scarf-like thing. As you can see, I'm doing this actually fairly quickly. One thing about faces is they're kind of people have different shapes. Sometimes it's more oval and sometimes it's more circular. But the eyes actually appear in our heads in the center from the top to the bottom. They're not closer to the top. They're actually more in the center. It's kind of deceiving because of the hair. And hair is kind of like a hat too. It's kind of like a solid thing. Now on the sides, I'm going to draw things that are, I'm going to draw a couple of my dogs, my two dogs, things that are important to me. Maybe you have pets, or maybe you have brothers and sisters, or maybe there's things that you really like, to do. Maybe you really enjoy reading books. You could draw things in the area, you know, around the area that exists around your face. You could draw other things. Maybe you like playing games. It's gonna be Alex here. Okay, so I don't know if you actually can actually see this. It's actually very light. But as you can see, I drew very fast. And then the point is, after that, you will go over it with your Sharpie. You'll go over your drawing with your Sharpie, and this creates the outlines that you're gonna use for your watercolor to paint on. So most of us, for our mouths, the the lip on the bottom is normally a little bit bigger than the lip on the top. Here I've made mine kind of exactly the same size. Maybe kind of just sketch in a little bit for the eyebrows. My hat kind of goes down over my ears here. And the hat is kind of lumpy, and then it kind of creates kind of a lumpy shape. And as I said, I'm wearing a scarf today along with my hat. It's pretty cold outside, so I've left these on. So now you can kind of see this more. It'll show up a lot more. So the Sharpie is very good for being able to paint on top of. Dog. Alex. So once you draw yourself in, maybe I'll draw in a little kind of like lines here. So once you get yourself drawn in, you have your border, maybe draw some things on on the sides. Go ahead and erase the pencil lines with your eraser. You don't have to erase all of them, but just try to kind of get them out of the way because they can be kind of distracting. You will kind of paint over this, but this kind of helps it get it ready for painting with your watercolors. So I just have like one of these pink erasers. Um, And then try to get off the erasers. So when you have the pipet is, you use that. So kind of set this up like a station. Your the styrofoam plate, paper towel, watercolor, and your water. You can take your pipet and actually grab some water and put a couple of drops in each color. And let that sit for about a minute, and that will soften up your watercolors and make them easier to use. When these, so watercolor paints are colors mixed with water, and they actually turn back into paint once they get wet. So that's kind of the cool thing about it. So the more the more wet this is, the more it'll the darker, the more intense the color will be. So basically, your primary colors, a lot of you already know this. Your primary colors are what? Let's see. Yellow, blue, and red. And when you mix them together, yellow and blue, what do you get? That's right, green. And you mix yellow and red, what do you get? That's right, orange. And you know that red and blue make purple. This dark one is purple. And brown is actually created by mixing red, yellow, and blue, all three of the primary colors together. So it probably has varying amounts of each one, probably a little bit more yellow. So what we can use this the styrofoam plate for is used for mixing colors on. You can test your colors and you can mix colors on them. So since I have brown skin, I'm going to paint myself brown. But my skin is kind of like kind of tannish. So what I'm going to do is I might actually kind of lighten it with some yellow. Because I have kind of yellow tones in my skin. So I'm going to... So if you have an area that you want to paint, an idea is to first paint it with water, and then go take some of the paint that you mixed and mix that over the top. So you can use the styrofoam plate to mix colors and also test to see if this is the color that you want to use. It may be too dark. One of the things with watercolors is it's easier to go darker. It's very hard to take this away to make it lighter once it's on there, because it's it's translucent, it's transparent. So you can paint over with more layers, but once it gets really dark, so you kind of want to start lighter is kind of the point. And I'm going to go ahead and paint, since this has gotten really nice and soft. My hat is black, so I'm going to go ahead and paint it black. Where the folds are, I'm painting it black. And I just dip my brush in water, and there's enough paint in my brush. So before the paint dries, what's cool about watercolor is it kind of, you can paint with it once even some of the marks that you made on the paper, you can kind of use those to paint with again. So these are kind of the folds in the hat. So I'm leaving some of this to be lighter and some of it is darker to show that the hat is kind of foldy on top of my head. And I'm going to go ahead and paint my glasses, they're kind of mainly dark, like kind of a blue-gray, but I'm going to go ahead and make them mainly just blue. It's because this is my decision to be creative, even though they're not this blue. I'm going to make them very blue. So you can make things however you want. If you want to decide that your hair is purple today or green, you can definitely do that. And my scarf is actually black and white, but I'm going to decide to make my scarf blue to color coordinate with my imaginary blue glasses. Watercolors use a lot of water to paint with. And if your water in your cup starts getting really dark, you can go ahead and dump it out and get new water, because that can affect the colors that you're using. So I'm going to give myself lips that are kind of pink, and I'm going to make this, it's kind of a burgundy color. I'm going to use a lot of water to make it very light because I feel like it's too dark. So most people, their lips are like a little bit darker on the top one than on the bottom one. The bottom one is usually a little bit lighter. And my eyes are very dark. So I'm going to go ahead and paint these very dark. My hair is kind of like, it's not completely black. Actually, I have a lot of gray hair, but that's a secret. So what I'm going to do for the eyebrows is just kind of dot this on, like use the brush and make kind of, like they look kind of furry, kind of like a caterpillar. Um, and then I have on a black sweater today, so I'll go ahead and put some down here. Now, when you have an area, you can paint the whole area with water and then come in with your color, and then it will kind of like bleed together. So this is the exact reason why we use the Sharpie to color with, to draw with, is because it is permanent, and it won't like kind of wash away the way that a marker would, like a regular Crayola marker. So if you can really clean your brush well by doing this a couple of times and then kind of drying it out on the paper towel. I forgot that I left kind of this area inside my eye, inside the glasses. I didn't paint that. And my dogs are, one of them is brown and the other one is kind of orange. So Buddy is kind of more, and he has a white. They both have kind of the same, like a white chest and a white stripe on their forehead, but they're slightly different colors. So maybe you could paint here, your pets, or if you have a brother or sister, or things that family members, or things that you like to do. Um, things that make you, you, the way that you're unique, the things that you enjoy. I think Buddy has actually pretty dark brown eyes. So I'm making this like a dark, mixing brown and black together to make kind of a nose color for him. So for Alex, I'll go ahead and use kind of an orange mixed with brown, I think. He's not orange like the orange, like an orange of the fruit. I mean, not that much. That would be crazy orange, but maybe orange mixed with some brown. A little bit more orange than that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of black inside of the eye for the pupil. And for the background, and then I'm going to go ahead and maybe make a combination of blue and purple. Now the background, you want it to kind of remain light, and here's the tricky part. You don't want it to be darker than what you have as yourself. You want to keep the background light, because once it gets darker than you will like kind of disappear into it. So the way to make something light with watercolor is go ahead and paint the area with a lot of water and kind of dampen it first. And then the color that you want it to be, you want to add a lot of water to that color and kind of go over this and bring more water into it. And that's called a wash, is when you use a really light color. It's okay if you have some brushes. Actually, it kind of looks like I'm now kind of in water. And that's okay. And then kind of... So this paper is kind of a... It's kind of a, like, for like a printing things on. So when you paint on it, it's kind of interesting. The smaller sheet that you have is actually a sheet of watercolor. And so that's going to be what you're going to use when you make your final one. So you can consider this one to be kind of like practice. Even though I got to admit I'm pretty happy with my results so far. So go ahead and do both sides around your head for the background color. I admit that my favorite color is blue, which is probably why I've used blue a lot. Maybe I'll make this a little bit more purple. I want to make sure this is really wet, so that it doesn't end up, so that it ends up staying pretty light. I want this to remain light in the background. As you can see, I'm using a lot of water for this watercolor wash. Now, if you have, I'll tell you what, if you have colored pencils or also markers, once this dries, you can actually color over it. By that I mean like maybe I would want to go in Alex and maybe draw some hair on top of them. This isn't completely dry, but you could, oops. Yeah, you would definitely want to wait until this is dry because you could poke a hole right through the paper. Kind of draw, use a colored pencil, maybe draw on top a little bit, maybe draw some details. If you have brown colored pencils, any kind of brown, those are good if you drew any pets. You can then draw on top, you know, some kind of texture marks. Maybe in my scarf, maybe I had some kind of pattern in there. I could draw on top of it. So you can, watercolors are really cool because of the fact that they are light. You can layer them. You can paint more on top when it's dry. Be careful though, because once you add water to it, it kind of turns watery again somewhat. But you can do kind of layers on top of it. Wait for it to dry and then color on top with colored pencils or also markers. And use your other paper for drawing more things. And the sheet of watercolor is your final one, the one that you want to do your special one on. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed your watercolor painting.